Hello, everyone, and welcome to another review of Star Wars The Bad Batch. I say another review, but this is really sort of kind of the first review since the last time I talked about Bad Batch. It was more or less just kind of predictions, but anyway, you get what I mean. Today, we're looking at Season 1, Episode 4, Cornered. So, and I've got some interesting thoughts about this episode. It's a good episode, I think. There's a lot of cool things in it. We see Fennec Shand again. We were first introduced to her in The Mandalorian, portrayed by Ming-Na Wen in that show and this show as well. She's returned to do the voice work. So for those of you that don't know Ming-Na Wen, she is the original voice of Mulan from the good movie from the 1990s and not the remake that they made recently. She is also Agent May on Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So that's a 7-season run right there for being Agent May, and whew, boy, was that a good show? Is she a good character on that? So, and I did reviews of season 7 last year when that was airing. So here I am again talking about Ming-Na Wen. It's kind of fun. We see Pantora for sort of kind of the first time. We've seen glimpses of Pantora in the past. We got a little bit of it in, I think, the opening narration to Sphere of Influence, an episode from Season 3 of Clone Wars, where we see Chairman Papanoida. And then we were supposed to see more of it as well in, I think it would have been Season 7, because it would have been part of the Ventress and Quinlan Voss arc that ended up getting scrapped when the show was canceled, and then it got turned into the novel Dark Disciple. So we haven't really seen too much of Pantora, but, Pantorans have shown up here and there throughout the Clone Wars era. So it was cool to actually go to the planet proper and actually explore it a little bit more than we would have otherwise. One thing I've noticed is, so after last week, which was one of the things I don't think I covered in my predictions, is that last week Wrecker hit his head in the crash of their shuttle on that moon, and it was bothering him for part of the episode. So a lot of people are going, oh no, he hit his head. Does that mean his inhibitor chip is acting up? Are they going to have to somehow fix that or something like that? And I was kind of thinking along that lines too, but then in this episode he hits his head again. So at this point, I don't think him hitting his head in the last episode is foreshadowing for the inhibitor chip acting up. I think there is now a running joke that in every episode Wrecker has to hit his head, because he hits his head on Seleucami. He hit his head in the last episode, and then in this episode, Fennec Shand gave him a 1-2 and sent him crashing into a wall where he hit his head, and it knocked him out. So I think every episode, Wrecker just ends up getting hit in the head. And I guess if you really want to get technical, he hit his head on the ground when Crosshair shot him in the first episode. So poor Wrecker, he just keeps getting beat up. So if anything, I don't think his inhibitor chip is going to act up because of all the head trauma. So his inhibitor chip is broken because he's taken one too many hits to the head. So I wonder if that's a coincidence or if that is a deliberate running joke that they're doing. Because that'd be funny if it is actually a deliberate running joke that they're doing. So yeah, it was Omega still being a fun character, I feel like. Maybe this episode she was a little... Well, no, I was about to say a little too naive, but I mean, she's literally never been off Kamino before. Seleucami was her first stop, then that moon, and now Pantora. And, we're waiting a week between each of these episodes. But these episodes are happening within a pretty short time frame. So, I mean, they were probably on Seleucami like the day before, maybe. So, yeah, she doesn't really know anything about how the world works. So, her naivete is pretty genuine, I feel like. So, I could see how that might start to get annoying to some people. But I feel like that right now it's justified in her immediately trusting Fennec Shand was, even to a kid that's maybe been, grown up in the real world, so to speak, I think maybe even they might fall for that because she was so nice. So I think for right now, Omega's naivete is kind of working for her. But she's, Still not dumb. She still has some know-how, but she just doesn't quite know how everything works, and so that's gotten her into a little bit of trouble. Because she was easily distracted by the I don't know what they're called, but it's that same alien species that was Puddles or whatever it was from Star Wars Resistance. Gotta say, I think I prefer that species design in the Clone Wars art style that it was used here. It's like, okay, that doesn't look that. I just did not really like that species in Resistance. It was just a little too ugly there for my liking. Where here, it's like it was still ugly, but it was textured differently. So it's like, okay, I can maybe kind of see the appeal of these things as pets. And of course, as Puddles did in Resistance, the one of the ones here in this episode kind of helped cause trouble because it took the little clone trooper doll away from Omega, which I love that that's been a thing in canon recently, that we start to see some in-world toys and stuff, because we sort of kind of had that since the beginning, because Luke had his little model T-16 Skyhopper that he played with in A New Hope, but other than that, we haven't really seen too much by way of like children's toys, this thing that helps make the world a little more feel a little bit more lived in and believable, that this is a world that actually exists. And so since Rogue One, we've kind of been seeing these like little clone trooper dolls, because in the opening of Rogue One, we saw that a trooper had that was holding up a Death Trooper was holding up a Stormtrooper doll that Jyn had, and then here we see some clone trooper dolls. So I like those little details. Those are cool. So Fennec Shand starting to starting to show why she's this feared bounty hunter assassin that worked with the Black Sun, as was described in season 1 of Mando. If you're just going off her one appearance in season 1 of Mandalorian, she's a good shot. But other than that, her character isn't really much, because then she quote-unquote dies in that episode, and then she comes back in season 2, and then we really kind of get to see a little bit more of what she's about, but even then she's still kind of just hired muscle. So this episode I really appreciate, because we start to see a little... I think this is really where we're going to see a bit more of how she ticks. For instance, end of the episode, the Celestin accidentally let the Bad Batch get away because he was asleep, and he didn't. He runs out trying to stop him, going, "No, she hasn't paid me yet." And so then Fennec Shand at the end of the episode confronts him, and he's all upset. He's all afraid. He's like, "I'm sorry, I tried my best," and she just pays him. She goes ahead and pays. It's like, it's not your fault. I get it. Just call me if they, come back. And so that was kind of a refreshing take for a bounty hunter, because if that had been, say, Cad Bane, that dude would have been dead. If it had been Dengar or Bosk, they might have... I don't know if they would have killed him, but they certainly would have roughed him up a little bit for messing up their job. But let's think about it, though. It's like, Fennec Shand didn't kill him, no. But, but that doesn't mean she's totally nice either. She didn't do that out of the kindness of her heart. She's probably thinking, you get more flies with honey than vinegar. So she went ahead and paid him, and it's like, well, maybe he can be an asset again in the future. Just because it didn't work out this time doesn't mean I have to, blow his head off. So that's interesting, because she is, she does kind of have this softer side to her, which I don't quite know whether or not that's authentic, or if that's just an act she's putting on. It may just be an act she's putting on, because I don't know. She does a good enough job acting that I kind of believed her when she was being all nicey nice with Omega, and then she turned right back into that bounty hunter mode when Hunter got there. But she killed plenty of people in this episode that were just kind of like she stole the speeder from that one guy, just hit his head and threw him out of his speeder. I'm pretty sure he's dead, because they weren't like miles above the sky in the air or whatever, but they were still a decent amount off the ground that I'm pretty sure that guy's dead. Then she killed 2 cops, because she shot the one cop and then his speeder crashed into the second cop, and then they both blew up in a fiery explosion. So she has, at the very least, a body count of 3 in this episode. So, Yeah, she is definitely, just because she may have the capacity to be nice doesn't mean that she should be underestimated. She's definitely a force to be reckoned with. And obviously I think we will be seeing more of her, judging by the end of this episode. It's like, she's still going to be looking. I think that she was hired by the Kaminowans, and they're trying to keep this quiet and a little bit hush-hush because, they're trying to get back their potentially Force-sensitive clone, and if the Empire knows that they're specifically trying to get their potentially Force-sensitive clone back, that might not work out very well. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So now on to my more interesting thoughts of the episode. And this kind of ties into a look at the series as a whole so far. Is kind of looking at it, I've kind of started, this episode felt very familiar. And in that, and what I mean by that is that it kind of felt like an episode of The Mandalorian, and that doesn't just have to do with the fact that Fennec Shand was here. It kind of has that, first of all, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I really like The Mandalorian. Mandalorian's a good show. If you want to see my thoughts on The Mandalorian, go back and watch my season 2 reviews. I'll go into more depth on stuff there that I'm going to mention here in a second. So there's not really anything wrong with it feeling like an episode of The Mandalorian, because The Mandalorian is a good show. However, I do want the Bad Batch to kind of have its own identity, because that's kind of been the nice thing about all the Star Wars shows up until this point, where each show has had its own identity. They've all been Star Wars, yes. That much is the constant that runs through them. But each show has been different. Clone Wars is a war show. There's a lot of war, a lot of death, a lot of trauma. They take some breaks to have some lighter arcs and stuff like, hey, here's some stuff with droids in Season 5, stuff like that. And they do that, but more or less, the Clone Wars is about the cost of war and how a republic turns into an empire. Then we get Rebels, and that starts off as kind of more about family and found family trope and stuff like that, and then it evolves a little bit, and then it really does become the show about how do we topple an empire in season 2, 3, 4. But it has its own distinct identity that's not Clone Wars, and that is one of the things that initially, I think, back in 2014 when the show first started airing, was kind of something that put people off from Rebels. It's like, this isn't Clone Wars. It's like, well, duh, it's not Clone Wars. And then, in a way, it sort of kind of almost did become Clone Wars by the end again, with all the returning characters and stuff. But, and then Resistance was trying to do too many things at once, so it has really kind of a mixed identity, because it wasn't supposed to be a racing show. Honestly, I would have really, really, really loved if they had focused a little bit more on the racers in Resistance, and if they had done like this circuit that travels to different planets, and then like one of the racers was a member of the Resistance, and then another one of the racers was a member of the First Order, and then they realize it like halfway throughout the first season that they're both agents for opposing factions, and then they have to use the race as a cover to try to get rid of each other. That would have been kind of cool, but that's not what Resistance did. It tried to be this comedy ha-ha show with hijinks from Kaz and Niku, but it was also trying to set up stuff for the sequel trilogy, and it's like, yeah, so it really kind of has this mixed identity. And then Mandalorian is a space western. So each of the 4 shows previous to Bad Batch has had its own identity, which has been nice. It's been fun. But then we get Bad Batch, and Bad Batch sort of kind of has it doesn't, as of right now, I don't feel like it has its own identity, because it's kind of taking the best bits from all the previous Star Wars shows. It has the grittier, darker tonality of Clone Wars, but it has the found family kind of happy emotional feels moments from Rebels, and then it's also kind of a space western adventure of the week type show like Mando. So this episode felt very familiar. I was getting shades of all 3 of those shows in this episode, which is interesting, and if it really kind of is supposed to be this mix of all 3, I think that could maybe work out, but I also want Bad Batch to do its own thing and really chart its own course. And you can say, if you want this out of Star Wars, then watch the Bad Batch, because like it kind of being an amalgamation of these 3 previous shows that Dave Filoni has worked on, and he created Resistance, but he didn't really have too much to do with that because he was busy on Clone Wars and Mando season 7 and Mando season 2. Well, and 1, I suppose. So it's not inherently a bad thing, but I would kind of like the show to, here in the next couple episodes, to pivot and start going, hey, this is what we do better than the other shows, because Clone Wars does action better than the other shows. Rebels does family better than the other shows. Mando does kind of serialized storytelling better, week to week adventures better than the other shows. So I would like Bad Batch to kind of start to have its own identity. It's good. I like it because, again, taking the best bits from all those other shows and running with it, that certainly works, and I like that. It does not make the show bad, but it does kind of muddle the identity of the show a little bit. So I am interested to see what they do in the next couple weeks, and because maybe right now they're setting up all these character dynamics and stuff. So it does kind of, it does kind of have these familiar trappings from the other shows. But maybe here in the next couple episodes is when Crosshairs and his team really start going after them hard and really start actively hunting them down. And maybe Bad Batch becomes Star Wars The Fugitive, where they're constantly on the run and having to be moving and having to uncover and unravel a mystery or something like that, and that would be cool. And it'd be its own spin on it, because like something like The Fugitive, it's like one guy against the world. The whole the secret agent's been double cross trope or something like that. I mean, we've even seen a little bit of that with Clone Wars, like individual episodes of Clone Wars and stuff. I mean, for Pete's sake, the season 5 Ahsoka arc, that was kind of that. But making it a little bit different, where it's the crew of it's the Bad Batch, and they're all on the run together, so they're a team. Just had a thought. A-Team Star Wars. Bad Batch is just the A-Team, but Star Wars, where, well, we know that they do a little bit of mark work based on a couple of the teasers or the trailers. So maybe that's going to be its identity. It's going to be the A-Team, but Star Wars. That works. So that's totally fine. So yeah, good episode. I liked it. I hope that, just my final thought, I really do hope that the Bad Batch starts to form its own identity going forward, and I think maybe it will. So yeah, I am very much looking forward to the episode this week, whatever that turns out to be, because that is kind of I do kind of wish that they would, like on Mondays or Tuesdays after the episodes have been out on Fridays, like, all right, here's the synopsis for next episode, but oh well. So I have to wait to figure out what the next episode's going to be until the day it comes out. Oh no, boo-hoo, poor me. So yeah, so that'll be it for this review. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.